Hey, welcome back to the channel. A bunch of knives on the table today. That's because we're going to be talking about shields, knife shields on traditional knives. And so I put together a bunch of knives. Can't even get them all on the table, with all with different shields. And so we're going to be talking about the history of these shields, what they mean, do they add value to a knife, a bunch of different questions having to do with shields. But if you're not into history, we're going to look at each one of these shields in the video. And so if you like shields, it'll just be a pretty cool display of shields. So either way, I hope you join me in the video. All right, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers. I really appreciate you checking in. I think this is going to be a really cool video for you. It's going to be interesting. You're probably going to hear some things you've never heard before, so I hope you hang with it. And we're going to be talking about shields. And so, what is that? Well, a shield is a metal placard attached to the cover or outside of a traditional folder. Back in the day, these were primarily used for inscriptions, and so people would put their names on them, or you would put a greeting on them if you were giving it to somebody, like for a birthday, a Christmas present, something like that. That was the original purpose of these plates. And the proper name for these is an inscription plate or nameplate. That's what they were both called in old catalogs. And collectively, knife collectors started calling these shields regardless of what shape, fashion, and form that they took. And that's a little different if you look at this knife. It's a fixed blade and it has a shield on it too, but it's not called a shield. It's called an escutcheon, and that's the spelling up there. And that is the proper name when it's on a sword or fixed blade knife. But when it gets down to one of these little knives here, it's just a shield. That's what we call them. All right, so if you look at this table, you would think every knife, every pocket knife came with a shield on it. Of course, that's just not so. Like a lot of people, I like shields, and I have a lot of knives with shields and a lot of knives without shields. But because I do like them, it seems like every knife has a shield on it. If you're a collector out there and you don't like shields, then most of the knives in a collection like this that you would put on a table would not have shields on it. And so when you go back and you look in catalogs, it's about 50-50. So just as many knives were made with shields as knives were made without shields. And so it's kind of like skewing the record here, because I just collected all these knives that had shields on them so that you all could enjoy them. So knife manufacturers kind of have a love-hate relationship with these shields. Knife manufacturers didn't really like shields. They was really no purpose in the shield. Some knife manufacturers just refused to put shields on their knives. And for instance, my English collection had like 45 English knives, but only about 20% of those knives have shields on them. Most of them are small, like this, like bar shields. And there's some variation there, but it's really clear that the English didn't really produce a lot of these knives and shields, and that's because didn't really make any sense, and there was always this effort to try to get away from the shields. But then you had people buying these knives. The other thing that you find with these shields is a lot of people do like them, and so they did. They're catchy. They caught people's eyes. They contributed to people's desire to buy these knives, and so manufacturers that didn't pass the attention of manufacturers, and so that's why they continued to put shields on knives when there was really no need to do that anymore. As recently as the 50s and 60s, manufacturers, tried to get away from producing these shields on knives again. Here's a Robertson from that era, from the 50s, 60s. You see, they just stamped it, the name into the scale material, and there's a bunch of different examples of knife companies doing this. Knife companies like Cutmaster just didn't put shields on their knives. Now, a lot of times they would put them on a penknife because that was a little different situation. People often gave penknives as gifts, but that's why today on the modern knives you just don't see shields. So every now and then a modern knife manufacturer will put a shield on a knife, but for the most part they're just not on those knives. The manufacturers were able to make a clean break when they went to a different kind of knife and just get away from putting shields on the knives altogether. So there aren't real clear lineages on these shields when they came about, how they came about, because knife manufacturers, it's not something they talked about. They just wanted to get away from the shields to begin with. And in collector materials, it doesn't get much better than that. So in Bernard Levin's guide to knives and their values, he doesn't really mention shields at all. And you look at Houston Price's price guide to collector knives, he dedicated one sentence to shields and basically just said that they were used as a decorative adornment to knives. And Roy Ritchie and Ron Stewart's book, The Standard Knife Collector's Guide, they dedicated 2 pages to that. And so that's some of the best information that we have on knives or shields. So do shields add value to the knife? Man, that's kind of a mixed bag. It depends on whether you like shields or not. There's a lot of people who don't like shields. They prefer to have a clean knife like this with this beautiful horn here, and you can see that horn unencumbered by a shield. And here's Stag, same way. There's just a lot of people that appreciate this open palette, which displays the beauty of the type of material that is on the knife. And so, to say that a shield adds value to it, it may somewhat add value to a group of collectors who like a particular shield and they're bidding on it to get that knife. It may raise the price of the knife incrementally, but as far as really adding value to the knife, it doesn't really do that. So there are some exceptions. There's knives like Remington's Bullet series. On the original knives, these are quite pricey, and you could attribute it to the shield. But another thing about these knives is Remington just didn't make a lot of them. So knives that have these really coveted and fancy shields, like Categorizing's Doghead series, those are also happen to be on knives that happen to be kind of scarce. So it'd be tough to say the shield is the reason that the knives are so expensive. Utica produced a knife, there's a picture up there for you, called a buffalo head, and that's very scarce. and of course, it's very pricey to get a hold of that knife. Um, Western produced a very similar shield to that, but it's a bull, and so those exceptions right there, uh, really add a lot of price to the knife. There's no other reason to separate it. If you put the same type of knife with that knife, um, yeah, the shield is the only thing that's really making the difference. So just very few occasions where it changes the price in the knife. I'll show you this graph, I guess you'd call it, in Bernard Levin's book. In that, as you look at it, you can see there's a lot of different things that add to the value of the knife. And there's things that take away from the value of the knife. But one thing you'll notice as you look at that is that shields is not part of that value equation on the knives in Bernard Levin's book. And that's certainly the case in most collector books. So they don't really add to the value of the knife. How did we get shields in the first place? So it's kind of a concept or an idea, and it begins back in the Middle Ages when you have kings, queens, and nobles, knights. And these knights would go into battles, and they began to put the outcomes of their conquests, the wins, the achievements that they had accomplished on their battle shields. And so that led to the family crest or a coat of arms. And so on the coat of arms, what a coat of arms is really a family history or collection of family history that was passed down from one generation to the next. Eventually, this coat of arms was transferred to other things like signet rings, seals that you sealed envelopes with, brooches, pendants, and pretty much anything that you could put it on. And it finally made its way back onto the items they were commemorating, which was the swords and the knives. And so these swords would be stamped with escutcheon, which had records of the accomplishments of the knight or warrior, as the case might be. And from that, we get the shield from the escutcheon, is where the actual shield comes from. Initially, like I said, knife makers didn't like it, but it quickly became apparent that customers did increase the value of the knives or the profit to the knife maker, and so they started doing it. Once they started doing it, they couldn't really get away from doing it, and that's how it comes down to us today. I believe that they put these type of bar shields and stuff in knives, but very few people actually engrave them. Back in the 1800s, around the Civil War time, was the last time that they were, really popular for doing that type of thing, when people would engrave a date, a happy birthday or something like that. The best you can get nowadays is like a knife that is a retirement knife, where there's some engraving on the knife commemorating the retirement. So there's a lot of different shield designs out there, as you can imagine, and some attempts have been made to categorize those. This one you're looking at comes out of Ron Stewart and Roy Ritchie's book, and you can see there's 5 different categories. I've seen lists like this that have more detailed categories and more of them, but this is just a basic list of how these shields are called. and what they fall into. And so you have the on the list, you have the big roll, which is what I call these, but Roy Ritchie called these profiles, different kind of anything that basically didn't fit the normal description of what a shield is. You had the crest type shield right here. You have the oval type shields under this category right here. You had the bar shields right there, and the banner type or scroll type shields. And then you have the emblem, which could be pretty much anything, but often these are just round. You know, Cases XX is an emblem shield, the famous Boy Scout shield. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to look through all these knives and look at some different cool shields. Okay, so this is not an exact science. I'm just using Roy Ritchie's suggestion for categories. And as we look at the profile ones, this is a rose, really nicely done from GEC. Here is Paul Revere's. This is a commemorative series from 1976 that Schrade did. Liberty Bell. Here's the battle axe, which is a really cool shield, and really the only reason I got this knife. Of course, the dog head that K-Bar is famous for. This was a really unusual one, just an arrow from Robeson, Remington's Bullet series. This is just a really nice representation of a panfish, and it's called a sunfish, and I thought that was really cool. This is Rosecraft's spade. That looks just awesome on the knife. This is a Bulldog brand Acorn. Remington's Acorn is actually more detailed in the way it's put on. This is another Schrade with just an awesome Bowie pewter shield on it. This is really unusual. I don't recall seeing this in antiquity. This is Rough Rider's turtle shell shield, because it's on imitation turtle shell. And I thought that's really cool. This is an Imperial. They just put a fish on it. The Rough Rider Lucky Horseshoe. This is another Bulldog brand, and it's tobacco leaf on the knife, commemorating the use of these Congress knives by tobacco farmers. And this is Cattleman Cutlery's steer shield. That looks pretty cool. And then we'll look at some crest. So this is really your basic crest right here, in its purest form. Used to be a battle shield. This is Camillus's company, the stainless cutlery, use this shield. Let's see. Here are a bunch of different federal shields. Once they start curving up like that, they start looking more like a federal shield. I forgot who this is. This is a Holly manufacturing company. Another federal shield. You can see how companies just put their own little flair on these shields. They weren't trademarked, but sometimes you can definitely tell, like this is a Cattaraugus. This is one of the shields they use. Very unusual. Cataraugus, the only one really use a shield like this. And uh, it's easy to tell Cataraugus knife because of this shield right here. These shields here, I'll just say Schrade used a bomb shield and this type Federal shield. They used it with the original company, Schrade Cutlery Company, and they used these shields all the way up until the 90s. And so, when you see these shields, they're pretty indicative that it was a Schrade. Like I said, they're not trademarked, so any company could use any shield, but they tended to use, one they had designed. This is kind of like the Cataraugus shield, but you see the difference between the two. This Cataraugus shield is very, very distinctive. This is a shield from Westinghouse. This is just your typical Federal shield with the blue, the red, and the stars on it, by Moormaker. And here are some bomb shields. They call them bomb shields because it looks like the old bombs from World War One, what they look like. And this is just a variation of a bomb shield right there. The difference between the Federal and the bomb, of course, is the length of these that drop down. This is called the double bomb, and it's unusual. It's a case where you see it on a modern knife, and so I'm sure some people appreciate that. Let's move over. So this is a category called ovals. A lot of times companies will put in their brand trademarks in this. This is a Robertson Pocket Ease. An oval from Schrade Cutlery Company, the original. This one is from Empire, and you can see it's got these beads on it, and that is a patented design that Empire did. This is called a gimp shield. Some people would call these a hot dog shield. It reminds them of a hot dog. And here you can see an example of where a company, this has had United States Navy imprinted on it. Pardon me. This is kind of a different gimp shield. It has pointed ends there. This is an Excelsior from 1890s. Another gimp shield with another example of it being imprinted with some information. In this case, a TL29. This is a really fancy one from GEC. It's basically a gimp shield, but you can see the upswings are really sharp and the ends are really sharp. And that's a attractive looking shield. This was basically a gimp shield, and when you put a circle in the middle of that gimp shield, it's a propeller shield. That's what we call a propeller shield. Just another variation of a gimp shield. Some people will call these chest shields, chest piece shields, and there's more vulgar names for those also. This is just another example of a shield where the trademark is imprinted in the shield. This, of course, is Bucks's hammer, knife, and nail shield. And, of course, Case uses most often an oval with its trademark name in there. You go on to bar shield. That's your typical bar shield. This is one that was used in antiquity a lot because these were basically inscription devices so that people could put their name, initials, or a greeting into them. These are kind of unusual. It's a parallelogram, geometric figure, kind of a bar shield. This is a bar shield that just has the ends rounded, so kind of like an elongated oval, but it's a bar. This is an example. These are older. You don't see a lot of these in the 40s. These were used in the 1800s. It's a bar shield, but it's rounded, and then you had a swell in the center that was either almost like a propeller shield or in this case, they're points. This is fancy bar shield where you have the points on the end and sharp edges. Of course, Mastercraft is a brand name of that Robeson used. Really, I like that shield. Look at how detailed the design is inside of it. Simple bar, rounded bar shield, old timer. These are examples of would fall into the banner or scroll shields right there. I thought I had a banner shield. I couldn't find it. And banner shields just look like a banner, you know, like a birthday banner or something. This is a Rough Rider. This is a really cool older example of a banner shield from Robeson. This is a Robeson. These are emblem shields. And emblem shields could be really cool because pretty much anything could be drawn inside of these. And so sometimes they're pretty elaborate, even though it's a very simple design. This is a case XX. Way back when, W.R. Case and Sons would put this XX in a circle on one of the blades. This is really unusual. It's a medallion, but it's not from the company. This is a rope company that installed their medallion on some knives that were contract made for them by Schrade and put onto the knife. Pretty cool. This is a United Boker shield right there with some red enamel. Case's coat of arms shield. That reminds me of a Man Ray. I call that a Man Ray shield a lot. And simple diamond. This is a not often used shield. You find it every now and then, but it's an old one. This is an example of a pre-Civil War one right here with inlaid silver rope around the knife. And this is genuine ivory. Pretty cool little knife. All right, we've wasted enough time looking at shields. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found it informative. I definitely appreciate y'all checking out the video. It took a lot to produce this video, but it's kind of fun to look at all these different shields in one spot. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.